Hey there, spooky people and paranormal enthusiasts. Paranormal 101. Consider this before you go out looking for ghosts and spirits. Today I'm diving into one of the most compelling and spine-tingling questions ever. What happens after we die? Do our spirits continue after our physical bodies perish? Let's explore the mysterious world of life after death. First off, what is the paranormal? Typically, it's anything beyond scientific explanation. Ghosts, spirits, and yes, the survival of consciousness after death. Many cultures and religions believe in an afterlife or reincarnation, but the big question is there any scientific proof? You might be surprised, but there are indeed some brave souls in academia and science who have ventured into studying this phenomenon. Researchers like Dr. Raymond Moody, who coined the term near-death experience.
But now I will be honest, because at 74, honest is all you can be, that I have reached the conviction, as it is, or acceptance, that there is a life after death. So what I want to do tonight is I'm going to go through 6 considerations that have brought me to this point of view. Now, I'm saying this because people who read my books and know about my work, they have the right to know what my own personal take on this, so they can evaluate, or it will help them maybe put an evaluation either way on my work. So, in all honesty, I have to say that, yeah, I do accept there is. And so this is how I got there. I have no interest in persuading anybody else. Everybody has to go through their own process on this. But I will talk about how I reached this. The first thing that really brought me to a sense that, in effect, that I give up was empathic experiences that medical doctors reported, in which they co-participated with their patient who was dying, who was having a near-death experience. And the impressions of the physicians were that they were actually interacting with the patient during the near-death experience. And really the first one of these I heard was some years ago now. You will learn at my age that years just kind of collapse. It may have been as long as 8 or 9 years ago, quite a time. But I interviewed a wonderful young to me, graphic artist from the West who was in a horrific car crash. And in the car crash, his wife was killed instantly, and I believe one of his children, and the artist himself lost a leg in this accident and almost died. But he lived, and had this powerful experience to talk about, and so he shared it with me. And he was thinking of writing it up, and I encouraged him to do that, because artists, that's how we process things, is by creating something. So then some while later, he called me back and he said he had done this great manuscript, which I read. It's a really good book. But then he called me back a while later and he said that he had decided, before he published this book, that he really should share this with this trauma surgeon who saved his life, because actually often patients don't tell their doctors about these experiences. So he confided to this physician, surgeon, what had happened to him during the procedure. And so, as I gather, the surgeon, Dr. O'Driscoll, became solemn and acknowledged that during the procedure, he was aware that the patient wasn't going to die, because he talked to the patient's wife during the surgery. And then as the word spread about this, the scrub nurse in the procedure spoke up and acknowledged, yeah, well, I didn't see her, but I heard her. And so this was a big shock to me. I mean, it really was a wake-up moment for me, because I am a logician. One of my areas in philosophy was logic and philosophy of language. And the reasoning process is a very important thing to me. And I had the feeling that I had run out of room for thinking of alternate schemes to fit this in. I just didn't know what to say. I went through a real inner, not turmoil exactly, but awakening. And then a few years passed, and I went to Italy. And after my lecture on near-death experiences, a very nice tall man came up who identified himself as a surgeon. And in his eyes, I could see that he had been through something which had really changed him. But I didn't know what it was. But he led me back to the back of this auditorium, and he said that some while before he had been doing an elective operative procedure on a fairly young man who was overall in good health. And so there was no thought of any danger to the surgery. But in the event, the patient had a cardiac arrest during the surgery, and the surgeon was unable to revive him. So he told me that he was just beside himself, thinking, oh my God, how did this happen? And what am I going to say to the family? And just really distressed. And he said at that point, the door of the operating room swung open, and a woman came in, raving and yelling and screaming. And he thought at first that she was a psychotic person who had somehow burst into the operating room. And you know how when you're stressed out, you can't make sense of what somebody else is saying anyway. I just learned this in the ER, when people will come in and they're not injured, but they're just seen a horrible accident. So you're trying to get a sense from them of what happened, but it's all over the place. You can't make sense of it. So that's how this doctor felt like, what is she talking about? So he told me that he literally had to focus in on her face, say, what is this woman saying? And he said he realized she was saying, my husband is not dead. And she said, I was out in the waiting area, and my husband came to me, and he said that you think he's dead, and I should come in here and tell you that he's not dead. So the doctor told me that he doesn't even remember resuming the resuscitation. But he should, sure enough, after a while, that the patient's heart started beating again. And he said he was there in the recovery room when the patient regained consciousness. And he said the first thing the patient said to him was, Doctor, I was up above my body up there watching you down there, and I could tell you thought I was dead. So I kept trying to tell you, I'm not dead, but you wouldn't hear me. So I went out into the waiting area to see if I could get through to my wife and tell her to come in here and tell you I'm not dead. And I give up. I mean, I just don't know. At that point, I have run out of room. I began to think at that point that there is an afterlife. And I'm still adapting to that.
I completed basic training, was also certified as a medical and surgical tech. And I knew that the best way to reduce temperature was to take aspirin and what we call ABCs. So I went and asked the ward boy for 6 aspirin tablets and 3 ABC, took 2 aspirin, ABC, found in the bed, and went to sleep. About 12 o'clock, I awakened and I was burning up. Climbed back into the bed and went back to sleep. I said 1 o'clock, it was 3 o'clock. She was going to get me up. About 2 o'clock, I awakened again and I was on fire. Took my last 2 aspirin and APC and tried to go back to sleep and couldn't. And I said, one reason I couldn't go back to sleep because I was coughing up so much material and spitting in the sputum cup. Now I was in a ward where you have 12 beds on one side, 12 on the other, and did not want to turn on the light until it was time to go because the nurse had let me her alarm clock to go off. So then I was sitting there sweating, could I get on the train? Somehow or another I had the idea if I could get on the train, that they wouldn't throw me off, and if the train went to Richmond, if I ever got to Richmond, I could get into the medical college, and if I collapsed in front of the medical college, they wouldn't kick me out of that. You can see my thinking was getting a little thinky. So, things were just getting steadily worse. So finally, in desperation, to see what time it was, I turned on the light, and sure enough, it was about 10 minutes to 3 or 10 minutes before the alarm went to go off. And I looked down into the sputum cup to see why I'd been coughing up so much material and got the shock of my life. That sputum cup was full of white blood. That really scared me to death. Pardon my play, I didn't mean that. I went in and asked the ward boy for a thermometer, took my own temperature, and when I took it out of my mouth, I don't know which one of us were in the greatest state of shock, he or myself. The temperature actually registered 106.5. Went in the system telling him not to squeal on me because before I could say anything, he went out to the nurse, wasn't in the ward right at the time to get the nurse. She came back in, got another thermometer, took it down, put it in my mouth. She took it out about minutes later. She didn't say anything at all. She just told the one word to get the medical officer in charge. He came, never even bothered taking my temperature again, put a stethoscope on my chest, said call the ambulance immediately, we're sending him over to the X-ray section. And I thought to myself, what's wrong with this guy? He doesn't know it, but I've got to be on the train here. And 25 minutes, he's talking about sending me to X-ray. You know, we have a name for this, psychiatry. Just like you heard yourself here talking about massive denial. We call it projection. It's like when I pointed at him and said, the trouble with him is, and you know, I have 3 fingers pointing back at me. But at that day of time, I wasn't a psychiatrist. So, the last thing I remember from a human point of view was the captain and actually the doctor there saying that I think I could stand up long enough to get a picture of my chest, and I really thought this guy there with his trees. I remember hearing that machine making that peculiar little whirl and then a click, and that's the last thing I remember, and I'm told that I collapsed in a heap at the base of that machine. Now, young people, when this thing happened, I was 6'2", I weighed 178 pounds, weighed slightly bit more than that, as you can see from all this professional dignity. But I really didn't have any fat. I'd been a long distance runner in college, had just finished basic, and I was pretty much approximately 2 weeks later, when they put me on the scale, because they told me that when my weight got up to 135 pounds, that they had saved my seat for me at the medical college, and when my weight got to 135 pounds, they put me on the train and sent me to Richmond. Now, I don't remember, because one of the hardest things I had to do was stand up on the scale at this time. But as near as I recall, my weight was something under 100 pounds. So you can begin to understand how totally devastating this thing was. Now, what happened from the rest of the medical history is this. Apparently, my condition steadily deteriorated until about 24 hours later, when a ward boy making his rounds and to give him medication came in, he could get no pulse, no respiration, no blood pressure. He did the same thing I would. He went and called what we call the OB, the medical officer in charge of the ward at night. He came, and I'm told after complete examination, told the ward boy I had expired for the ball. Now, fortunately, the ward boy decided to finish his medical rounds before he decided to get me prepped. He came back apparently to finish, to really get me ready for the ball, and he claims he saw something move. So he goes and gets this medical officer again. Now this I know nothing about, or this I've been told secondhand. The medical officer comes back the second time and tells him, no, he did not see anything move, and I'm just as dead this time as I was the first time. Because again, he did check me completely off. Now, to me, one of the most amazing things, speaking as a physician myself, is that a little Army ward boy talked to captain and to give him a shot of adrenaline directly into the heart. Y'all wouldn't necessarily know this, but in case my heart is suddenly stopped, shot, lost blood that could be replaced, because this was before the day of either closed or open cardiac massage, that would have been the treatment's choice. But I later was to find out that the diagnosis was double lobar pneumonia. Now, it's hard for you all possibly to realize this today because you live in the day of antibiotics. But even as late as 1945, at the end of World War II, 1 out of every 2 people who entered the Medical College of Virginia with lobar pneumonia died from it. It was a great killer. It's still your great killer of old age. But with antibiotics today, we certainly in use to not worry with it. Now, I tell you that from a subjective point of view. I mean, from a physical point of view. From a subjective point of view, this is what I experienced. I awakened, but I found myself in this little room. I'd never been in this room before. I'm looking around the room trying to find my uniform because I realized that I had missed my train. Now, let me tell you this sounds intuitive, but it's not quite as intuitive as it sounds. How many of you have ever set your clock to get up and go hunting or fishing and find yourself wake up just before they off that hour? Many of you have ever been mothers, and I don't think y'all do it anymore, but when I used to be family physician, we had the mothers feed the babies every 4 hours whether they were hungry or not. I think it was part of a sadistic trend in medicine. And many a time I've seen my wife wake up just before the alarm clock went off, whether the baby alarm clock went off or not. Because we do. We have a built-in time system in us that is accurate down to well within a second. And I knew intuitively I had missed my train. Let me kind of give you a picture of what this room looked like. If you went from the door out to where this room was here sitting and back over to about here and then back here, imagine a white hospital bed here, a white bedside table here, a lamp right here with a 15-watt light bulb, the big lamp was turned off. That day time they didn't have the screens like we have at hospitals where you can pull around the ceiling. What they pulled those screens, and once the screen was in bed, it was on an iron frame, kind of a white sheet on the iron frame, and pulled it around the front. Over here was a door going to a connecting bath. Right here was a white metal shack. That was the only thing you know. And I'm looking for my uniform because I think I've got to get to medical school right quick. Couldn't find it. I said, well, I didn't have time enough to remain in that place. I was going to leave there anyway. So I come on out of the room, go into the ward, because this was a room apparently set between another room like it here, another room here. Across from me was the nurse's office, over here was the ward boy office, and the storage room over here on this side was the doctor's office. Back here were double doors going to a ward that had 12 beds on each side. Here double doors going out into a connecting ramp that connected all these wards together. So I go on through the doors going into the connecting corridor, and I saw this ward boy coming down with a covered up tray. Now, whether that was medical instruments, food, what, I don't know. But I turned around to tell him to watch where he was going because he was going to walk into me. And either he went through me or I through him. Now, you would have thought that this would have gotten over the very thing you heard Kubler Ross talk about magic and now. At that age, when I got my mind made up I was going to do something, I was going to do it. So there's the door right across the corridor going to that door, so I go through that door. I'm no sooner through that door than boom. I'm about 500 feet to 500 yards above the ground, traveling at the most incredible rate of speed you've ever seen in your life. See the topography gradually changing from the mesquite trees and the little sand dunes there in the panhandle of Texas until where it's getting more and more like I was accustomed to. Past many small rivers, finally past this large river. Saw this white all-night cafe on the corner, decided I lighted down because I saw this lone civilian walking down the street getting ready to go into this cafe to see if he could tell me how to get, whether I was on the right road to get to Richmond. Man, you got to admit, I'm either out of my tree or this is too fantastic to be a story. Go up there to ask him what town this is, which way to get to Richmond. And this character acted like he could neither hear me nor see me. So I thought, well, I'll just tap him lightly on the side of his cheek. There's something wrong with him. See if I can get his attention. I go to tap him lightly on the side of his cheek, and my hand goes through him. Now, that told me something was disgustingly wrong. I had never had that happen before. This is the second time this thing had happened. So I go over and lean up against the guy wire of the telephone pole to kind of think this thing over. And my hand goes through the guy wire of the telephone pole. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had left something back in that room, in the bed. I didn't want to think what it was I possibly had left back there. But whatever that thing was, because I was still using massive denial, it has apparently changed my appearance so neither the ward boy nor this guy could see me. And the next question that hit me, well, what would be the point of going on to Richmond, even if I was going in the right direction? Because the ward boy hadn't seen me, this man hadn't seen me. Would the commandant be able to see me? Would my family be able to see me when I got there? And I was rapidly coming to the conclusion, for some very strange reason, no. Now let me stop at this stage and say this. Approximately, I guess about, because this was December, probably the night of the early morning of December the 20th of 1943. In October of 1944, because I conditioned out of medical school, I and 4 of the medical students were reassigned back to Abilene, Texas, and Brooklyn, Texas. We got a week's delay in travel. We wanted to go by and see New Orleans. First night we spent in Cincinnati, Ohio, coming from Richmond to Cincinnati. Second night we decided we were going to spend in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Third night, fourth night, and fifth night in New Orleans. Then on over to Dallas, spend the night there, then to Fort Worth, and went on into Abilene, Texas. We pulled into Vicksburg after dark. This was in wintertime, in October. There in this hotel, got up early the next morning because we were trying to get down to New Orleans as quick as we could. None of us had seen it. We'd all heard about as much about New Orleans, I guess, as any girl here. And we were driving down this street, and we had to turn up to get even with the bridge, because if you've ever been in Vicksburg, you go across over to Louisiana, but it's very high over on the Vicksburg side. And I said to the medical student driving, I said, would you mind going down 1 block farther? He said, why? Now this time I had, for many reasons, already learned not to tell anybody about this experience I had, because everybody kept looking at me like I was a bit daft. I said, don't ask me why, I just want to see if there's a white all-night cafe on the corner. We went 1 block farther, and there was the same white all-night cafe I'm telling you about right now. I had never been in Vicksburg in human form before. So this takes, you see, this out of any possibility of being an illusion, a hallucination, or a dream. Now, I suddenly was to make a great discovery, because by this time I'm getting a little bit frantic. Somehow I intuitively knew I had better go back, and I'm coming now back to the experience I was telling you, to Camp Parkley Station Hospital. And my massive denial was breaking down. I began to realize I had left the body in that bed. I couldn't truly account for it because I had a spiritual body, a spiritual being. And I had no trouble getting there. Now that's very definitely incredulous, I'm sure, for you to understand what I'm saying, but I want to say something to you. William James was absolutely right when he talked about this type of experience being totally inapplicable. I'm having to use a language that there is no language to actually describe what I experienced. So the only thing I can do is try to translate into words that you can get some concept of. And I'm sure there's a gap. But time and space as you and I comprehend it in this dimension does not exist once you get out of this dimension. And no trouble at all getting back there because of time. In our spiritual form, we have a homing device more correct than any physical. If you look at your map and look at Abilene, Texas, Richmond, Virginia, and Vicksburg, Mississippi, you'll find out just about on a straight course that you could have possibly been on. There's the crow flies, I got it. But you see, when I left that room, I hadn't looked to see what room it was. I hadn't looked to see which ward it was. And when I got back there to the station hospital, I started on the strangest search you can imagine. And I'm sure that most of you young people have heard about an identity crisis. Well, I've got a new definition of identity crisis. You think you know what you look like? Forget it. You've never seen yourself except in the two-dimensional object known as a mirror from here up. You can go over here to Mineral Road and maybe look there where you've got your glass in three directions where you can get some idea side. But just out of curiosity, how many of you ever heard yourself for the first time on a tape recorder or saw yourself on television were a little shocked at what you look like? You have some idea what I was faced with. Now I'm going from ward to ward, room to room. I can see the soldiers lying there in the bed. I can see the nurses. I can see the doctors. The only trouble is, in the United States Army in that day and time, all of us wore the same type of GI haircut. We were all under the same brown army blankets. And it's amazing how much you look like somebody else. That time I had a 5-gram fraternity ring with the University of Richmond insignia on the side. 1945, the year I was due to graduate, I've been on the schedule. And I'm going through trying to find these bodies lying in the bed that have this ring on. I see several people that look like me. But those that had the handler didn't have my fraternity ring on. Now I'm getting more and more desperate because I can see these beings, these soldiers, these nurses, these ward boys, these doctors, but I cannot contact them, and quite obviously they can neither hear nor see them. And finally, after what seemed to me an interminable amount of time, I went into this little room and saw this corpse lying in the bed. I gathered it was a corpse because the sheet had been pulled up over its head. And I didn't like what I saw, because when they pulled the sheet up over their head, they left this part of the lower arm, wrist, and hand. And on the finger was my 5-gram fraternity ring, one of the way to mix it up. Because it was the 5-gram seal on the black onyx in the University of Richmond State. And you don't have one made up like that very often. Not only that, the onyx was chipped, by a chip. And what distressed me, the color of that hand had the exact same color that I'd seen my grandfather's hand have when he had expired 3 years before. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. You're dead. But you see, I wasn't prepared for this. I had been raised strict, orthodox, fundamental Baptist.
These guys are pushing the boundaries of what we understand about life and death. So, do we contact our loved ones from the other side? Many people claim to have had experiences, dreams, visions, or feelings of presence that suggest their departed loved ones are reaching out. Mediums and psychics have long been the bridge between our world and the afterlife, though skepticism is high. Why isn't more mainstream science diving into this? Well, the paranormal is tricky. It's elusive and hard to measure. Mainstream science demands reproducible results and solid evidence, which is tough in the realm of spirits and consciousness, but that doesn't mean it's not real. Let's talk about survival of consciousness. Some experiments, like those conducted at the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies and New York Academy of Science, examine studying cases of young children who recall past lives with verifiable details. Mind-blowing, right? So does our soul survive after death? The jury is still out, but the anecdotal evidence is compelling. Stories of near-death experiences, ghost sightings, and reincarnation suggest there's more to life than meets the eye. And let's be honest, it's comforting to think that our spirit continues on, that we can watch over our loved ones and maybe, just maybe, communicate with them. If you're fascinated by the paranormal, keep an open mind and explore these mysteries yourself. Who knows, you might just uncover a truth that changes everything. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more spine-chilling content. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the unknown.